Good evening, one and all. I am N. Himaja. Today I am going to deal with the topic entitled Basics of Chromatography, which is one of the important techniques. But before we enter the topic actually, I would like you all to meet one very famous personality in the field of chromatography. I think you must all have recognized him at the very first look. Yes, he is none other than Michael Sweat, who was a very famous Russian botanist, and as his job he used to continuously work on plant pigments, and in one of the studies he separated the plant pigments using a technique. At that time there was no name for that technique, but because of the beautiful separation of bands, as you can see here, he named the technique as chromatography. So I think you all have come to an idea of what I am going to speak today. Yes, it is nothing but chromatography. So chromatography is actually made up of two different words. Chrome, which means color, and graphica, which means writing. So it is made up of two different words. Chrome, which means color, and graphica, which means writing. And he was given the title of the father of chromatography because he was the first person to actually give the entire procedure for the development of chromatography, and thereby he was given the credit of the father of chromatography. So you must all be wondering, what are the applications? Okay, whether it is just the plant pigments that are being separated, or are there any other important applications of this chromatography? Before answering your question, I would like to show you one more image. So in this, you have seen 4 different pictures, and 4 different pictures are really important for mankind. The first one depicts the food processing industry. The second one depicts the drugs and pharmaceuticals. The third one depicts the fermentation or the brewery industries. And the fourth one, and the most important, ecologically important one, is nothing but the wastewater regeneration. So can you think of a common technique that is being continuously used in all these industries? Yes, you are right. It is nothing but chromatography. It is now even being used even these days in all these major industries for the separation of various components. So as just like Michael Sweat initially used for the separation of plant pigments, the chromatography is even used today for the separation of different types of components in various industries. As and when we speak about different chromatographic techniques, I would like to emphasize on which different types of industries the effect is continuously being observed in the case of chromatography. So now let us see. You must all be wondering whether the chromatography is just of one type or there are of many types. Before answering that question, I would like to emphasize on the principle of chromatography, because every analytical technique will have a principle, and here the chromatography is no exception. The principle of chromatography is nothing but partition coefficient. So what is this partition coefficient? Partition coefficient is nothing but it is the differential distribution. It is the differential distribution of a component between two different phases. So it is the differential distribution between two phases. What are those phases? The phases are nothing but the stationary phase and mobile phase. So what is stationary phase? Stationary, what do you mean by stationary? It is nothing but it is not moving. It is at a constant position. So why is it present in chromatography? It is present as a support for the separation of the analytes, because we have been speaking that the chromatography is nothing but a separation technique. It is a simple separation technique. So for separation you need a support, and thereby the stationary phase will act as the support that is required. Whereas mobile phase, mobile, it is movable, it is capable of moving, and thereby it is the one which is moving and thereby takes the analytes along with it. So the interaction between the stationary and mobile phase, especially the analyte interaction, whatever the sample we are planning to separate, its interaction with the stationary and mobile phase will be highly important in their separation. Few of them, if they are having more interaction with the stationary phase, because it is not moving, it also does not move. The analyte also does not move. Whereas if it is a mobile, if it is having more interaction with the mobile phase, it starts moving along with the mobile phase and it makes lot of movement, and therefore the distance that it moves, the separation that happens is also farther. So that is about the two phases that are involved in the partition coefficient. So now let us see that whether the chromatographic techniques are all similar or there are different types of chromatographic techniques. Yes, your guess is right. There are different types of chromatographic techniques. When there are different types of chromatographic techniques, how are they separated? How are they distinguished? So the first distinguishing that we take into criteria is nothing but the chromatographic bed shape. The chromatographic bed shape is the first criteria that we take into consideration for the separation of chromatographic techniques. So according to the chromatographic bed shape, especially the stationary bed, what I am speaking about here is, because I have been telling you, the stationary bed is the support and thereby it is the one that is responsible for the supporting. Thereby the chromatographic bed shape, here I am referring to the stationary phase. So here the bed shape, based on the bed shape, it is divided into planar and column. The planar chromatography means it is the stationary phase bed is present on a planar surface, and thereby the planar chromatography is a two-dimensional chromatography. You will understand the meaning very soon. What do you mean by a two-dimensional chromatography and what do you mean by a three-dimensional chromatography, as and I speak about more and more chromatographic techniques. But before that, you have to realize that planar chromatography is of two types. The first one is nothing but the paper chromatography, and the second one is nothing but the thin layer chromatography. So let us discuss about each of these chromatography in very detail. First, let us speak about the paper chromatography. Paper chromatography. What do you get the first impression? There's some paper involved, is it not? So here, as any chromatographic separation requires the stationary phase and mobile phase. Here, the stationary phase is obviously paper. That is what people get mistaken. But please remember, students, paper chromatography employs, of course, the paper is there. The stationary phase is nothing but the paper. What is paper made up of? It is made up of cellulose fibers. And what happens when you dip a paper into a glass of water? It starts soaking up, is it not? And when paper starts soaking up water, now what happens? The cellulose fibers will now start lodging few of the water molecules, and those water molecules and here the solvent molecules are acting as the stationary phase, not just the paper. Most of the students get confused here. So the stationary phase is nothing but the solvent molecules trapped in the cellulose. The solvent molecules that are trapped inside the cellulose are acting as the stationary phase, whereas the mobile phase, this is another important concept. The mobile phase is nothing but, it is a combination of aqueous and non-aqueous solvents. So it is a combination of aqueous and non-aqueous solvents, and in the ratio, especially the combination will be something like this. I am giving you an example where we have butanol, acetic acid and water in the ratio of 4:1:5. So this is one just example, not just one. This is not the universal solvent that is being used, but in most of the criteria, this is the one that is used for the separation of various compounds. And thereby, I am just giving you an example of a solvent that is used in paper chromatography. So now let us plunge into how the procedure of paper chromatography actually happens. So for that, I have got a live model here. So as the name itself indicates, because paper chromatography requires a filter paper, it is nothing but a Whatman #1 filter paper. It is the best quality filter paper because we do not require any type of impurities to hinder the separation of the components, and thereby the Whatman number filter paper is an ideal choice for such type of separation. So in my hand I have a paper that has been cut into a strip, and now I have a dot marked on it. Because this dot is the region, I'll magnify the image for your convenience. So this is the filter paper strip, Whatman #1 filter paper, and there is something called as a origin. This line what I have drawn here, this is called as the origin. And this is the region where you mark the spot in the analyte that you want to separate in the form of a spot. And the spotting is done using a capillary tube or using a micropipette if the analyte that you are separating is highly volatile. So now what happens is, so this is the filter paper strip, you have an origin point where you have spotted the sample, and then now because stationary phase is there, then what about the mobile phase? We have to procure the mobile phase now. So the mobile phase will be always present in a solvent trough. So some container which is holding the solvent. And what do you do now? You immerse this filter paper into the solvent. Not completely, but till here. The spot should not directly get plunged into the solvent trough. It has to be just introduced. Something like this. So here we have a simple glass of water where you can just dip the sample. See now what has happened? The water is being soaked up by the paper, is it not? So this action is nothing but the capillary action, because the paper is capable of absorbing water, and thereby because of capillary action against the gravity, slowly the water starts coming up, is it not? So against the gravity the solvent is moving now, and it is called as ascending chromatography because the solvent is moving from the bottom to the top, is it not? So this is about the paper chromatography, and this entire chromatography is performed in a chromatographic chamber. Why? Because we have used certain components which are volatile. For example, here we have butanol, which is highly volatile, and if you keep it in open, they can evaporate, and this ratio will get disturbed. Otherwise, there was no point in following this ratio, right? So thereby, the chromatographic chamber should be present. It should be done in a closed chamber. So I have an image of the paper chromatography. So in this image, you see the solvent trough and also the filter paper that is hanging, and also the spots are being separated, is it not? So red, purple, blue colored spots are being separated on a filter paper strip. And this chromatography will happen for about 40 to 50 minutes, and then when the solvent front is about to reach 3/4 of the filter paper, you stop the chromatography. You remove the filter paper from the chromatographic chamber, and ultimately now what happens? You have to put it for drying because it's all wet now. And before putting it for drying, you have to mark a solvent front. The solvent front is nothing but the region till which the solvent has reached the filter paper, till it has ascended. The solvent that has ascended till the filter paper is called as the solvent front. So here the solvent front will be marked. The reason I'll let you know very soon. So now, okay, the partition coefficient has been followed, and now we have used the chromatography has been done, and the chromatogram, once the chromatography is performed, the piece of paper or the filter paper on which the spots are present is called as a chromatogram, and now we have obtained it, we have even dried it, we have marked the solvent front. So what will we do with it? Sometimes if it is a self-color containing compounds, you will be able to see few spots here and there. But there are few components which do not have any color of their own. For example, amino acids. They are not to be seen on the filter paper. It will just appear like a normal paper. Then how do you identify the spots? It is done by a process called development. Development. It is just like a photograph. Once you take a photo, can you see anything? Especially in the old photographs, old cameras, nothing. You have to develop the film, and ultimately then you get a photograph. Similarly, here the development of the chromatogram has to be done. How is it done? So here, for example, since I have taken the example of amino acids, ninhydrin solution is the best method through which the spots can be made visible. So ninhydrin solution will be prepared, and whatever the filter paper that was dried earlier and air dried earlier will now be sprayed with the ninhydrin solution. And then within after 5 to 10 minutes, slowly on the paper, you start observing spots like this. This is the same chromatogram that I have sprayed with the ninhydrin, and now we'll be able to see the spots like this. And those spots will be purple in color, because amino acids, when they react with ninhydrin, they give purple colored spots, except proline, which gives yellow color, and thereby these spots will be developed. And there is also a solvent front that we have marked, the space till which the solvent has run, and this will be how your chromatogram looks, and this is the origin point where the sample was earlier placed. Okay, so the partition coefficient concept has been solved now. So how do you measure partition coefficient? What does these spots give you anyway? What are they determining? What are they? How will you determine what the spots are? So for that you have to have a reference, some reference that have been performed earlier and are authenticated. So here that reference is nothing but the retardation factor or the retention factor. The terms are used interchangeably. So here I am using the term retention factor. So the retention factor or the RF. So this RF value is being calculated by a formula. It is nothing but distance travelled by solute, which is nothing but the sample that you have put, divided by distance travelled by solvent. So the distance travelled by solute divided by distance travelled by solvent. So this is how the retention factor value will be calculated, which is nothing but a measure for your partition coefficient. And the retention factor values for several compounds are already calculated by various scientists who have performed chromatographic techniques again and again, and they have standardized the procedures. So a particular retention value will be highly specific for one particular component. So let us now see this image where I have shown a chromatogram, and there are some measurements on it. So we have calculated the distance travelled by the solute and the distance travelled by the solvent in the form of solvent front and the midpoint of the spot that has been developed. And ultimately the retention factor is now calculated. The RF value is calculated as 2.1 centimeters divided by 2.8, because the distance travelled by solute was calculated to be 2.1 centimeters when it was measured by a ruler, and it is being divided by a distance travelled by the solvent, which is measured to be 2.8 centimeters. And ultimately the RF value now is 0.75. So based on this RF value, you have to refer back. And ultimately, you'll get to know what the compound is, because the RF values are all standardized. And ultimately, now you get to know, okay, this is the compound. So now let us speak about the applications. Where are this paper chromatography being applied? Paper chromatography is applied in especially the food processing industries and also in fermentation industries for the separation of various dyes, because foods employ a lot of dyes, and some of them are legal and some of them are illegal sometimes, and thereby for testing whether the company is properly using this particular dye. Then for such purpose, the food processing industries will make use of paper chromatography. But the major use is in the fermentation technology, because in fermentation technology, continuously you have to check in the fermentation broth that whether a particular component is being generated or not, and it is highly essential. For that qualitative analysis, please remember, qualitative analysis is perfectly done by paper chromatography. Whether it is present or not is what is called qualitative analysis. Quantitative means you have to give the number, how much amount, but that is not possible here. But paper chromatography can give you qualitative analysis of any type of component, whether it is present in that particular sample or not. So this is about the basic chromatographic technique, but not least, it is very important technique called as paper chromatography. And this is one of the planar chromatographic techniques, is it not? So now let us speak about the second type of planar chromatographic technique, which is nothing but the thin layer chromatography. Thin layer chromatography, which is in short called TLC. Okay, TLC. So this thin layer chromatography is also a planar chromatographic technique. It is also having a planar surface, because how did I show you the filter paper? It is a plane, right? Similarly, even the thin layer chromatography is also a planar chromatography. Then what is the difference? Why should TLC be used when paper chromatography is already available? Thin layer chromatography is employed because of certain reasons. Let me state those reasons first. The first advantage of the thin layer chromatography is nothing but the sharpness. The second one is nothing but the speed. And third one is nothing but its ability. Ability to withstand corrosive techniques. So what is sharpness? Before thinking of what is sharpness, we have to speak about resolution. See, what do you mean by resolution? We all study about resolution in microscopy, is it not? So when two objects are placed together, something like this, even from a distance, you should be able to see both of these as separate. That is called as resolution. So here, even the spots which are closely present, we should be able to see with the naked eye. We should be able to see them as a separate, two different spots. That is called as resolution. And sometimes in paper chromatography, this resolution lacks. And thereby here the thin layer chromatography has overcome that disadvantage in paper chromatography, and thereby this thin layer chromatography is sometimes more preferred over the paper chromatography. That is called as your sharpness, the first point. The second is nothing but the speed. See, I told you that it takes about 40 minutes for the paper chromatography, the entire chromatogram to be run. But in thin layer chromatography, it ranges between 5 to 30 minutes. Within half an hour, you can finish off the chromatographic technique. So that is about the speed. And the third one, ability to withstand corrosive techniques. What is this ability? So I told you about the development step in paper chromatography, that ninhydrin solution is being sprayed and then only we get the spots if it is an amino acid. But Can you spray acid on a paper? What happens? The entire paper will get damaged. It will be charred because it is made up of a cellulose, which is a sensitive material. But here in the thin layer chromatography, you will be using something which is more robust, and thereby it can withstand very high temperatures and corrosive techniques, something like spraying of acids or iodine vapors, because certain components they require that. It is absolutely necessary for them. Then for such analytes, you cannot use paper chromatography, and you cannot even leave chromatographic techniques because they are so available, and thereby thin layer chromatography comes to your rescue in such times. So what is making this thin layer chromatography so important? What is that stationary phase being used there? I said that paper is not withstanding that. Then what is the component that is being used as a stationary phase there? We are coming to that. The stationary phase that is being used here is a glass slide coated with silica gel or alumina. So the glass slide coated with silica gel or alumina is used as a stationary phase here. I think most of your answers, most of your questions are answered now. Because it is a glass slide, most of the acids or any type of corrosive substances or even the high heat or temperature cannot damage it, and thereby it is very robust, and thereby the development is easy for certain components. So now let us speak about the mobile phase. The mobile phase used here is also a combination of both aqueous and organic solvents. Different type of organic solvents and aqueous solvents mixture will be used here as well, just as in the case of paper chromatography. In the mobile phase, there is no much difference from paper chromatography to the thin layer chromatography, but in the case of stationary phase, there is a difference. The glass slide is being used here in the case of thin layer chromatography, whereas in paper chromatography, it is a Whatman #1 filter paper. Okay. So because of this, the thin layer chromatography has an added advantage over paper chromatography. And I promised you that I'll speak about the application of thin layer chromatography, is it not? So thin layer chromatography is employed in the food processing industries again, and especially it is related to our microbiology, because the fungal toxins called as aflatoxins, which are very dangerous and capable of causing liver cancers in humans, can be detected using thin layer chromatographic technique. And this thin layer chromatography techniques, the thin layer chromatographic plates are available commercially nowadays. What you have to just do is make a solution of the food that you want to analyze, whatever the suspected sample that you want to analyze, and thereby you put a drop on it, just like we have done in the case of paper chromatography. I'll draw an image. So this is the glass slide with a coating of the silica gel or alumina on it, and now we have an origin point where we spot the sample. The solvent trough is here with the solvent, and then you put it in it, and it is closed in a chromatographic chamber. Okay. Now what happens? The solvent will keep on moving against the gravity because of capillary action. Capillary action. And thereby the solvent keeps moving up, separating the analytes. And one more important difference that we can observe in the case of mycotoxin analysis is that you don't have to go for the development step, because one added advantage that you have with mycotoxins is that they are fluorescent. So what do you mean by fluorescence? When you put these components under the ultraviolet light or the UV light, they started giving fluorescence. They start giving light, and thereby they can, when you just take the TLC plate, the thin layer chromatographic plate after the separation, then you just need to air dry it or put it in an oven for some more time, for 150 to 160 degrees centigrade, and then later on you can put it in the transilluminator. Transilluminator is a special equipment through which the UV lights come, and you put it on that, and you ultimately observe if you observe the fluorescent dots on it, then the food sample is contaminated with aflatoxin. If not, your food sample is safe, and thereby it is thoroughly and very continuously used by the food processing industries for detecting if there are any type of aflatoxins are present in the food samples. So this is about the paper chromatography and the thin layer chromatography, which fall under the category of planar chromatographic techniques. So now let us move on to the second type of chromatographic technique, which is nothing but the column chromatography. So this is a column, a typical column. What do you mean by a column? Most of you may not be aware how a column looks like. So it is a cylindrical column with a plug or a knob at the bottom to open and close the entire column. And the mobile phase will run through the column from top to bottom along with the sample, whereas this column will be packed with the stationary phase. So that is the major difference between the planar chromatography and column chromatography. So here I spoke about one more thing earlier. I said that in planar chromatography you have two-dimensional separation, whereas in column chromatography you have a three-dimensional separation. So here, as you can see, in a column, if the stationary phase is packed inside, so here the stationary phase is present, packed inside the column. When the analyte is moving from top to bottom, for example, some analyte is moving from top to bottom. Now what happens? This analyte is now present in a three-dimensional phase, is it not? It is being surrounded both by the stationary phase and also by the mobile phase, and thereby this is a three-dimensional separation. But whereas in planar chromatography, where is the chance of three-dimensional separation? It is just one planar structure, you have the sample here and it keeps on moving in only two dimensions. But here this is a three-dimensional. Please imagine this, because now you are standing like this. For example, imagine yourself as an analyte and you are being pushed into a column. Now what happens inside? When I enter a column, I have stationary phase all around me and I am moving along with a mobile phase. So this is how the separation happens in the case of column chromatography. So in column chromatography we have three different types of column chromatographic techniques. Column chromatography is divided into three different types. It is of three different types. The first one is nothing but the gel filtration chromatography. The second one is ion exchange, and the third one is nothing but affinity chromatography. So these are the three different types of chromatographic techniques. So let us see each one of them one after the other. What are the principle, what is the procedure, how the chromatographic techniques are performed. So here the first one, let us take the example of the first chromatographic technique, column chromatographic technique, which is nothing but the gel filtration. Gel filtration. Filtration. What do you mean by filtration? You are separating something. You filter water, right, from several physical appendages or some sort of bacteria or viruses. Similarly, here we are doing some filtration. What filtration is happening? And what is the one that is filtering it? In home we have all water filters and such sort of things. But here we have a gel. What gel is it? It is nothing but agarose. Agarose. So agarose is nothing but a more purified form of agar-agar. You may be wondering what this agarose is. Agarose is also a polysaccharide, it is also a polymer, but it is the more purified form of your agar-agar, which is the common solidifying agent that is used in every microbiological media. Okay? So this agarose is the more purified form, and the principle here is very interesting. Now see what happens when you mix agarose in water or solvent. For that instance, this agarose will now swell and the beads will be formed, and between the beads there are pores. Okay, it is like a mesh now, and thereby in between these meshes you find small pores. See, this is an example of a mesh and these are all pores. Is it not? These are all pores. There are gaps in between the mesh. However closely knit the mesh might be, but still there are few gaps in between the mesh, and this agarose is now poured into the column, something like a non-reactive material, and thereby the column is ready now. So now let us see how the column keeps moving. How the solvent and the mobile phase keeps moving in the column and how the separation happens. So this is all filled with the agarose now. The polymeric mesh is already there. Now we are introducing a sample, a mixture of 3 different components which are of 3 different sizes. For example, we have a very big molecule and a medium sized molecule and a very small sized molecule. There are 3 different molecules in this sample, and we are pouring this sample from top to the bottom. We are trying to elute it from top to the bottom. Now what happens? According to the gel filtration technique, the larger molecules will be the first to get eluted out. Why? Because these larger molecules, can they fit into that small mesh? Because the mesh size that I have shown is very small, is it not? They are all closely knit meshes. And thereby, this larger sized molecule will just move in between those pores and will be the first to get eluted out. And thereby, by now you must have got an idea that this gel filtration chromatography makes use of the molecular size as the basic principle. So if it is a larger sized molecule, it will be the first to get eluted out because it does not get trapped in the mesh, and it is the first to get eluted out along with the buffer. Okay, then coming to the second one. So this is the first molecule, this is the second molecule, and this is the third molecule. The second one is medium in size. It is not as big as the first molecule and or as small as the third molecule. So the second one to get eluted will be the medium sized molecule, because the few of these molecules might get trapped here and there, but ultimately because of their relatively larger size, they will escape the matrix and ultimately come out of the gel filtration chromatogram, and this will be the second one to come out. And the last one, or the smallest molecular size particles, will be the last to get eluted out because they get trapped inside your molecule, inside the mesh that is formed by the matrix. In the mesh, they start getting trapped, and this takes relatively larger time, and thereby they will be eluted last. Okay, so let us see if we draw a graph taking time on x-axis, time of elution. Okay, I'll draw it at the top. So this is the time taken for elution. Elution means coming down from top to bottom, and this is the size. So the larger the size is, the lesser the time of elution. The medium the size is, the greater the time of elution, and smaller the size is, the time of elution will be the last. So this is how we can graphically represent the gel filtration technique. Okay, so what are the applications of this gel filtration? We can separate proteins, because proteins, we all know that they are relatively larger in size, and especially the proteins which are folded and unfolded. The unfolded proteins, as you all know, will be very large in size. Anything that is not folded will be larger in size, is it not? Even it is the case with biomolecules. So the larger sized proteins will be the first to get eluted out, whereas the smaller sized proteins will get, or the folded proteins, because they are folded, they are all compact, and thereby they are the ones to get eluted last. So this is the best technique for separating the components based on their molecular sizes. Then what are the disadvantages? Definitely there are few disadvantages of this technique. The only thing is that the most important one is that, see, for example, see these two molecules. Can you make out much difference between the molecular sizes? No, right? So such molecules you may not be able to separate properly, and that resolution, what I have spoke of earlier, will be disturbed, and thereby closely closely sized molecules or closer sized molecules cannot be separated properly using gel filtration chromatography. Please look at the image. This is for your more clear explanation of how the gel exclusion chromatography happens, where here we have three different colors. The yellow one seems to be the larger sized protein and thereby gets eluted first. The red one is nothing but a medium sized protein and thereby gets eluted next, and the smaller one or the blue colored protein is the last to get eluted out. So this is how the separation happens. Okay. So moving on to the next chromatographic technique, which is nothing but the ion exchange chromatography. Ion exchange chromatography. Ion exchange. Ion exchange chromatography. So as the name itself indicates that there are some ions involved here. So what are the ions that immediately come to your mind when you think of ion exchange chromatography? Cations and anions. Cations are positively charged, anions are negatively charged. So cation, thereby the ion exchange chromatography makes use of this principle of positive and negative charge, and the hydrophilic components will be the one that get separated out easily in the case of ion exchange chromatography. Please look at this picture where we have shown the anion exchange stationary phase particle. So here we are trying to exchange the anions, and for exchanging anion which is negatively charged, what should be the charge? It should be positively charged, is it not? Like charges always repel, whereas opposite charges attract. Thereby, for bringing a anionic exchange resin into the picture, we need the positively charged ones, and thereby they catch the negatively charged ion and retain with them, whereas the positively charged ions will be eluted out of the column. Similarly, when we have a cation exchange resin, the cation exchange resin will have a negatively charged surface and thereby will attract the positively charged compound and thereby will elute out the negatively charged particles. And this is the basic principle that is involved in the ion exchange. See, is it not? We are exchanging the ions and thereby we have to make use of ion exchange chromatography for such charged particles. So, where is this ion exchange chromatography used? The ion exchange chromatography is exclusively used. It is a very important application because all the industrial effluents, especially sometimes, are contaminated with heavy metals. For such heavy metal removal, which is very toxic for the aquatic environment, for the human environment, for the entire environment, such type of waters can be recharged by using the ion exchange chromatography. Okay, so this is the major application of ion exchange chromatography, but otherwise the entire column, everything is the same. Only the stationary phase that is being packed into the column is either an anion exchange resin or a cation exchange resin. And the last one of the chromatography is nothing but the affinity chromatography. What do you mean by affinity? Affinity towards something. It means they are having some interaction. So here we make use of either hydrogen bonding, van der Waals forces, etc. as the affinity. It is like a bait. For example, if you have gone for fishing, you will go with empty hands? No, you take a bait, right? You put a bait and catch a fish. In a similar way, from the entire sample, you try to catch out whatever the analyte that is required by you by using a bait that can catch it. Okay, so here the best example for your affinity chromatography is nothing but the antigen-antibody interaction. Antigen-antibody interaction. See, we are all being confined to homes now, thanks to COVID. So, and Israel has recently declared that they have isolated the antibodies against the COVID-19. So, how do you purify such antibodies? Antibodies never come individually. They are present as a combination in your blood, in your serum. Then how do you separate them? It is by using this affinity chromatography. What do you do is, in the column, you take the antigen of the coronavirus, the specific antigen against which the antibody is acting, and you pour the serum from top. Now what happens? Because the antibody which is highly specific to this particular antigen will now come and bind like this. And the rest of the antibodies will leave the column. And thereby you get a very pure separation of the antibodies. Okay, how do you separate them? Okay, they got fixed there. How do you separate them? Because by either by changing the salt concentration, gradually you can improve the salt concentration or decrease the pH, and thereby you can get this antibodies into the solution. So this is about the affinity chromatography. So we started with the basics of chromatography, spoke about Michael Sweat, who is the father of chromatography. Then we spoke about different types of chromatography based on the chromatographic bed shape, planar and column chromatographies. In planar chromatography we had paper chromatography and thin layer chromatography. Then in column chromatography we spoke about ion exchange chromatography, gel filtration chromatography, and the last one but not the least, affinity chromatography. So before winding up this class, I would like to give you all a small assignment, because you all must be excited after listening to this chromatographic class. Can we do this experiment? Is it not? We are all excited. So I am planning for a do it yourself activity, which you can do it at your home. But please make sure that you are more careful, and it's always suggested that you do it in the presence of a science teacher. Okay? So when you go back to your classes again, you have a new activity to be done. So what you can do is, meanwhile, you collect different types of leaves. Have you ever observed leaves? They are all equal and they are all having similar color and structure? No, right? Some have sprinkled colors on them. So different types of crotons are available. You collect all those leaves, tear them into pieces and put them in isopropyl alcohol. And then isopropyl alcohol is available nowadays, because the sanitizers that we use at home also have isopropyl alcohol. But be very careful, because it is highly inflammable compound. Be very careful. So you just need to put all these the leaf bits into the isopropyl alcohol and then close it. If possible, you can put it in a boiling water bath. Don't directly heat it, because isopropyl alcohol it is very volatile and it will evaporate very fast. So then what you can do is, you can take a small paper like this. The more crude paper, the better, because the absorption will be very good. Now what you can do is, once the isopropyl alcohol has turned green in color because of the extraction of all the component, all the pigments of the leaves, now you can dip it in this, something like this, and close it with another plastic glass or something that is available with you. And within 30 to 40 minutes, you start observing a chromatogram that you have created by yourself. You need to add a small support to this so that it doesn't fall off. Okay? And then you will get a chromatogram which looks something like this. It will be a beautiful chromatogram. It need not be like this, because depending on different types of leaves that you are taking, this will be the different types of chromatograms you will be able to create. And you can see that how different they are, how differently the nature has made the leaves. It has designed the leaves, designed the life in fact. Okay? With this, I hope that you have enjoyed my class and looking forward to meet you again. Thank you.